following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zoned Radio, and it's time for Dodgers baseball. A tale of two cities from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. My name is Peter Trunk, and as always, my partners are Ronnie Rubinovitz and Robert Cole. This February 27th, 2019, being the 8th anniversary of Edwin Donald Duke Snider's death, I thought that I would start the show off with a few things about Duke Snider and then send it over to Ronnie, who wants to talk a little bit about Duke. And then we'll go to Robert, who's going to talk about Mr. Walter O'Malley. Duke Snider was named Duke, his name Edwin Donald Snider. He was named Duke at a very early age, and it had nothing to do with baseball. His father named him Duke when he walked home from school in a self-assured swagger. His father said, "Well, look at this. Looks like the Duke." And the nickname stuck at age 7 or 8, and he was Duke Snider from then on in. He was born, Duke was, in Belvedere, California. A lot of times you look up his record and et cetera, his story, whatever you want to call it, and it says he was born in Los Angeles. He was actually born in Belvedere and raised in Compton. Compton is surrounded by Los Angeles. So just, pointing that out. He was an only child, Duke Snider was. His father, named Ward Snider, was a semi-pro baseball player, not unlike me. And his father, Ward Snider, was a semi-pro baseball player in his native Ohio. Check that out, before California. In Compton High School, Duke Snider was the high scorer on the basketball team, a basketball team which included Pete Rozelle. Now, for those who don't know who Pete Rozelle is or was, he was a commissioner of the National Football League for many years, and Snider played on his basketball team with him. Or I should say, Pete Rozelle played on Duke's basketball team with him. Duke was the high scorer. Snider played baseball, basketball, football, track. He was an all-around athlete. He signed with the Dodgers. Get this. He signed with the Dodgers for a bonus of $750. And the next day he was offered $15,000 by the Pirates to sign with them. And he actually turned them down. He and his father turned them down and said that they had to honor their commitment to the Brooklyn Dodgers. So they took $750 instead of $15,000. Now, if you don't think that's a lot of money, think again. We're talking 1945, 46. This is a lot of money. Duke Snider appeared in the opening of the 1947 season at Ebbets Field, along with Jackie Robinson. He made his first appearance in the dugout, in the Dodger dugout, when Jackie Robinson made his first appearance on the field. Duke Snider refused to sign the petition that was going around the year before in spring training, or a couple of months before in spring training, of the Dodger players who were saying that they were dead set against playing on the field with a black guy, Jackie Robinson. Snider refused to sign that petition outright. When he was sent to Montreal, after a few weeks up in Brooklyn in 47, he was sent to Montreal, and he also went to Montreal in 1948. Snider did, and he was one game he was instructed to bunt by the manager, Clay Hopper. I think you all remember Clay Hopper and that name. Anyway, Snider angrily swung away instead of bunting and hit a home run, and he was fined for doing that because he went against the manager's instructions. One of the few men in history to be fined for hitting a home run. In the World Series in 1953 and 1955, Duke Snider hit 4 home runs in each World Series, a record which still stands. You might say, whoa. There's a guy or two that has hit 5 home runs in the World Series. Yes, they have. But no guy has hit 4 home runs in 2 World Series. Only Duke Snider. And he did it in 53 and in the championship year of 55. He clinched the 1949 pennant for the Dodgers versus St. Louis with a 10th inning single to beat Philadelphia. He beat Philadelphia Phillies with that single, and that hurtled the Dodgers into the pennant over the Cardinals. In 1950, one more thing I just want to say. There's so many things I could say about Snider, and I have in past shows. I could fill the whole hour and more with things that he's done, but I'll just mention this. On May the 30th in 1950, in the second game of a doubleheader, facing Philadelphia, and actually facing a pitcher who would later pitch for the Dodgers, both in the season and in the World Series, Russ Meyer, he hit 3 home runs, and on his 4th at-bat, he hit a screaming line drive that hit 1 foot from the top of the screen by in Ebbets Field above Bedford Avenue, and he hit it so hard that it fell back down, and he only got a single out of it, but he missed his 4th home run by a foot. Snider was known to be the 3rd best center fielder in New York City during the 50s, after Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle. I can't say that I disagree with that, him being rated 3rd, but I will say this. In the decade of the 1950s, no Major League Baseball player in either league hit more home runs nor drove in more runs, more RBIs, than Duke Snider. He was number 1, and that includes people like Stan Musial, Ralph Kiner, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, you name them. Snider had more home runs and more RBIs than any player in the major leagues in the 1950s. And that's all I have to say about Duke Snider. I could go on and on and on, and I'm sure to some people I did go on and on and on. I'd like to turn it over, if I may, to my partner, Ronnie Rabinovitz, who wants to talk a little bit about the Duke. Ronnie?
Thanks, Peter. He was known as the Silver Fox and also as the Duke of Flatbush. Of course, as we know, as Peter said, there were 3 big center fielders in New York at the time: Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and Duke Snider. He was a gifted athlete in high school. They say that as a quarterback, he reportedly could throw a football 70 yards. Just imagine that. He was just a tremendous, tremendous athlete. He was runner-up to the MVP in 1955. He played in 6 World Series. And
Can I comment on that, Ronnie?
Sure.
If I may?
Yeah.
May I comment on that 1955 vote?
Yeah.
Because I spoke with Duke Snider about that 1955 vote, and it seems as if a writer voted for Roy Campanella twice by mistake.
Right. Uh-huh.
And if he hadn't voted for Campanella as his second choice, or 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th choice, Snider would have had the points to beat out Campy for that MVP vote. And I spoke to him at a card show one time about that, and he wasn't pissed off or mad about it. He just spoke the facts as they were, Right. But he would have been MVP if that writer had not voted for Campanella 2 times. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
That's okay. No, that's good. That's good. In 1949, with the Dodgers, he hit 23 home runs and 92 RBIs. And then from 53 to 57, he had 40 or more home runs in 5 consecutive seasons. Just amazing. In 1950, he hit 321. His lifetime average was .295 with 2,116 hits, 1,259 runs, 407 home runs, and 1,333 RBIs. And he was a great fielder, too. His fielding average was .985, which is tremendous. Mm-hmm. In 1955, he was named Player of the Year by the Sporting News. After he retired from baseball, he became a sports announcer, play-by-play, with the San Diego Padres in 69 to 71. And in 73 to 86, he was a play-by-play broadcaster with the Expos, Montreal Expos. He died at 84 years old. He was quite a guy. He was a great, great ball player, and he led the Dodgers to many championships and 2 World Series wins in 55 and 59.
He was great guy. He was, as you say, Ronnie Rabinovitz, a great ball player. He was not a very good ball player. He was a great ball player.
He was a great ball player.
He injured his knee. He injured his knee in 1955 or 56, and it was quite damaging to his career. Although he did manage to hit 40 home runs in 1957 with Brooklyn in their last season there, but he had to hit 2 home runs against Robin Roberts in the final game of the season. He had 38 home runs going into the final game of the season, and he's facing Robin Roberts, and sure enough, he hit 2 of them. And he got his 40 home runs for 40 home runs 5 years in a row. A hell of a ball player, a hell of a fielder, a great thrower. You know, his arm was so great. When the Dodgers moved to the Coliseum in 1958, he bet a teammate or two that he could throw the ball. He could throw a ball out of the Coliseum, which was unheard of because the Coliseum was 104 rows high. And Snider said, I could definitely do it. I could throw it out of the stadium. And he bet a couple of his teammates $100 each, and they gave him 3 tries. And on the 3rd try, I don't think he got it out of the stadium, but he did injure his arm. And O'Malley fined him heavily for that because he hurt his arm. There are pictures. You'll see pictures of Snider with his right arm in a sling all over the internet from 1958, and that was the reason he hurt it. He ripped the shit out of his elbow trying to throw the ball out of the Coliseum. But you know, the thing is this: in my estimation, when the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles and they moved into the Coliseum, straight away right field was 440 feet.
Right.
Now,
it was huge.
Even Willie Mays, when Willie Mays first came in and saw that, he said to Snider, he said, they just robbed you. They just pulled your pants down. They just robbed you of your power. And of course, it was reflected in the statistics. If the Dodgers weren't so greedy, or if the deal fell through, they would have played in another Los Angeles baseball park called Wrigley Field.
Wrigley Field, yeah.
Not too far, right? Not too far from the Coliseum. Wrigley Field, where the LA Angels played, and Snider probably would have had a banner season and might have hit 40 home runs for the 6th straight year. Who knows? I don't know. But that's if, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but it didn't happen. But anyway, thank you for your input on the Duke.
You bet.
Edwin Donald Snider was my boyhood hero, and I wore his number 4 throughout all of the teams I played for, mostly all of the teams I played for, and met him between 10 and 15 times in my life.
Great.
At card
Wonderful.
shows, etc. And I also, I don't know how to say this, but I also was in touch with his family after his demise in negotiating memorabilia. I got one of his gloves. In fact, I got 2 of his gloves, one of which I later sold, but that's another story. But Duke Snider was quite a guy. He's a very, very nice guy. I remember the first time I met him. I was very young. The second time I met him, I wasn't so young. The second time I met Duke Snider, I was like, 15 years old, 16 years old. When he played for the Mets, he appeared at an American Motors auto dealership in New Jersey. And when I went to see him, I was, right now I'm 6'2", 205. Back then I was 6'2", about 150, skinny string bean of a teenager. But I remember when I saw him the second time, when he stood up to shake my hand, and I told him that I had met him at Bamberger's with Happy Felton and Clem Labine years ago. He got up, shook my hand and stuff, and I said, wow, I can't believe that I'm taller than you are. I couldn't believe it. It shocked me. I couldn't believe I was taller than Duke Snider. But anyway, be that as it may, he was always a nice guy, always willing to talk, always willing to answer questions, as silly as they might have been. And I asked him dozens and dozens of questions every time I met him. And he was patient. He was positive. He never rolled his eyes. He never shrugged his shoulders. He never pushed me away or told me that's enough. And next, let's go, next. He was always a gentleman. He answered every question, like I said. He was a great guy.
Milwaukee.
He's a great guy. And you know something? When you meet your idol and they're like that, it really, really helps you, me as a person. I go home and I feel very, very happy and proud. If he was an asshole or if he was a jerk, I would have gone home and said, oh, man, the guy I really looked up to all these years is not a nice person. And yet he couldn't have been better. He was a prince every time I met him. Great guy.
And a hell of an arm. Anybody that can throw a football 70 yards.
Yeah, well, he holds the record. He held the record for quite a while at Compton High School. I don't know if he still holds it. He threw a 63-yard touchdown pass in his senior year there.
Wow.
So, he did have quite an arm. He had great legs. Branch Rickey used to say the kid, meaning Duke Snider, the kid's got iron springs in his legs. Until he hurt his knee, he's quite an athlete, an all-around athlete. Really great guy. Anyway, let's move on a little bit, and let's talk about something else. We'll stay in Brooklyn. We'll talk to Robert Cole. Robert Cole, you've been very patient. What do you have for us?
Okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned Wrigley Field before, talking about Duke Snider and what might have been. And one of the reasons why it was never in Wrigley Field was Walter O'Malley. Walter O'Malley, as greedy as he was, Wrigley Field only sat about 24,000 people. And he decided that Wrigley Field wasn't up to Major League standards, and they could not play there. Now, what made the Coliseum up to Major League standards is beyond me, because it was a joke of a ballpark. Okay. But, he decided that it was not up to Major League standards. However, he was okay when the Los Angeles Angels first started playing, and they played there. So, why that was? Well, why that was less money in his wallet. He kept envisioning 90,000 seats at the Coliseum, and that's what he wanted. Anyway, going back to Brooklyn, and before he made the move to Los Angeles, there's been a lot of talk recently, and then just recently was the anniversary of him trading farm teams with the Chicago Cubs. It was like last week, I believe, or the week before, and that's when the Dodgers got control of the Los Angeles territory, which would allow them eventually to move. Back in those days, if a major league team owned a minor league team, they had the first rights to that city. And the Chicago Cubs owned the Los Angeles Angels of the Pacific Coast League, and they had first rights to move there if they so wished. Wrigley was never going to move to Los Angeles, and he started to get a lot of pressure from the city of Los Angeles, that they felt he was holding up them getting Major League Baseball. At the same time, the Pacific Coast League, which had a good amount of really good baseball players, in fact, the major leagues unclassified them, felt that they were better than a AAA league, but yet not quite up to major league standards. So last couple of years of the Pacific Coast League, it was called unclassified. The Pacific Coast League had hoped to become the third major league, and they were working very hard towards that end. A lot of their ballparks could be expanded. In fact, most of the teams that were in the Pacific Coast League at that time are now in the major leagues.
Right.
So they were working hard at that. Walter O'Malley had his eyes on Los Angeles from the early 50s. Okay, everybody says, it didn't happen until 56, 57. He had his eyes on Los Angeles in the early 50s. The city of Los Angeles had sent letters out to all the major league owners, okay, saying that they were open for business, that they needed a team, they wanted a team, they were willing to talk to anybody about a team, okay. And so O'Malley filed that letter in his folder, and he kept an eye on it. And as the Pacific Coast League was trying harder and harder to get into the major leagues, and other cities wanted to go to Los Angeles, he kept biding his time. He knew that nobody could get into Los Angeles without negotiating with Phil Wrigley of the Cubs. That was the only way they could get the rights there. And he just kept an eye on things, and then when the heat was getting heavy and he felt Wrigley was wavering and, might in fact sell to American League team or another city, he decided to make his move. Called up Wrigley, and they made a swap of minor leagues. The Cubs got the
allow me, please, Robert. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Allow me, please. Didn't the Washington Senators have a deal almost in place to move to Los Angeles, and Walter O'Malley sent a written memo during the World Series over to the L.A. Politician and saying, do not make any deal until you talk with me after the series, after this game or after the series or whatever. O'Malley was afraid that Washington had beaten him to the punch, and he responded with the written, people like to say he wrote it on a napkin or whatever, that sounds so romantic and everything, but whatever. He actually sent a written correspondence over to the L.A. politician and said, don't make any moves, don't make any deals until you talk with me. And, of course, the L.A. politician thinking, hey, we could get the Washington Senators or the Brooklyn Dodgers. Who do we want? We want the Brooklyn Dodgers. So he waited, or she waited, and later they spoke, and O'Malley made his deal. But I interrupted you, and I'm sorry, but that was a moment where it should have been inserted. I thought. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely, but in a real sense, okay, that's sort of a romanticized version. Okay, in reality, back in 1941, okay, the St. Louis Browns owner had a deal. Donald Barnes was the name of the owner. Had a deal with Los Angeles, and I know you had an argument about this on another site, Peter. Okay, several years ago. But Donald Barnes of the St. Louis Browns had a deal with Los Angeles, okay, to put a team out there, okay, and then Pearl Harbor happened.
Right.
And that
the very next day.
And that never, came to fruition. But it had all been worked out. American League teams were going to go out there and not play a 3 or 4 game series, but spend a week or 10 days out there and play, a series of games. so that, cut down on some of the travel. Of course, that never happened. Okay. The Washington Senators, wanted to go there. O'Malley knew that nobody could deal directly with Los Angeles. Okay, they had to deal with Wrigley. There was no way around that. Okay, yeah. Washington did want to go out there. Okay, but Griffith himself pulled out of that. Okay, he didn't feel
Griffith being the owner of the Senators.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Clark Griffith. Right.
He had pulled out of that. Okay, but this put the heat on O'Malley. He knew that something had to happen. Okay, and he went ahead and made the deal of swapping farm teams. Okay, that really was the final nail in the coffin. Okay, yeah. It wasn't the beginning; it was the end. Okay,
yeah.
O'Malley was working on this for many, many years. He had it on his mind that that's where he was going to go. In fact, 1955, in the middle of the Dodgers running away with the National League pennant that year, out of the blue, everything was calm, everything was wonderful. The Dodgers were way ahead. Okay, he announced that they were going to play games the following year, again, one game against every team in the National League in Jersey. Okay, the only thing was he didn't tell anybody in Jersey that he was going to do that. He went to the National League. They said, yeah, sure, you can do that, because they didn't think he was going to do that, when in fact, yes, he did. And he went and he made arrangements with New Jersey, and they played games in 56 and 57. That was sort of his opening salvo to Los Angeles. Hey, we don't have to be in Brooklyn. I don't have to stay in Brooklyn. I'm ready to deal. I'm ready to go. And that's when the things really started getting hot and heavy. Okay. Everybody, again, romanticized, well, in 1957 he wanted to stay in Brooklyn. He had no intention of staying in Brooklyn. Okay. Every time.
Robert, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. And just as a footnote, thank goodness as everything turned out, even though it turned out very badly for Brooklyn Dodger fans. I went to many, many of those games in Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City, both in 1956 and 1957. And I saw Jackie Robinson, Sal Magley, and Duke Snider, all those guys. I saw Gil Hodges play left field. I saw a lot of games in Jersey City's Roosevelt Stadium, and I'm thankful for that. When was the World Series, or right before the World Series, or I don't know, and you will know this. I don't know it, but when did O'Malley actually fly a notion of playing all 7 games at Yankee Stadium to get 67,000 seats instead of 32,000? Was that 55 World Series when he put that out? And then, of course, when he was met with a brick wall against it, he said he was only kidding. But we know he wasn't kidding.
No.
What World Series was that?
1952.
All right.
1952.
Robert, I knew you would know the answer to that. I knew you would know the answer to that. Here's a guy, O'Malley, who actually thought that he could get away with playing all 7 games of a World Series against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium just to get the extra money, the seats. I mean, if you let that sink in just a little bit, let that sink in and think about it. It doesn't bode well for your final bottom line thoughts on Walter O'Malley. I mean, come on. I can't believe he actually floated that. He floated that out there and then pulled it right back, of course, when it was set on fire by the press and the fans. Just absolutely amazing, this man. How
Robert.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Robert.
I had a quick question. I had heard a story that O'Malley got a hold of Horace Stoneham, and he had said to him, why don't you come out to California too? And he said, you go out and see which one you like best, San Francisco or Los Angeles. And I had heard a story that his wife preferred San Francisco, so he said he would go to San Francisco instead of Los Angeles. Is that true? Do you know anything about that?
Okay, he did have a conversation, but not about that. O'Malley was going to go to Los Angeles. Okay, I mean, that was a lock, that he was going to do that.
That was a lock, okay.
Right. Okay. Stoneham was going to go to Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, right.
They own the rights to Minneapolis. They own the Minneapolis Millers of the American Association.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They had the right to go there. They had the rights there. Okay.
Right.
Before the 1956 season, okay, at the winter meetings and the closed-door meetings, Stoneham asked for permission to move to Minneapolis. Okay. Again, in those days, according to the baseball laws, the National League required every team to agree to a move. In the American League, you needed 6 of 8 teams to agree to a move, but in the National League, every team had to agree to the move. O'Malley asked the Phillies to block that move. He didn't want to be the one to block it because he knew he was going to be asking for permission to move in a couple of years. So he didn't want to be the one to block it, but he had the Phillies block it. And the Phillies, said, no, we don't want to make any moves at this time. Okay, that gave O'Malley a couple of extra years to finally work on Stoneham. And basically he said to Stoneham, he goes, most of your crowd in New York comes from our games. Okay, let's not ruin that. Let's not end that. Let's just take it to a different location and continue our rivalry, which is basically what they did. Now, one of the stories that is true is that O'Malley took Stoneham to San Francisco to Candlestick Park during the day, okay, early afternoon. The wind started blowing like 4 or 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he took Stoneham to Candlestick Park early in the day. It was very calm. It was beautiful, okay, just a mild breeze. And Stoneham loved it, fell in love with it. Didn't realize that, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the winds came in, okay, and as Stu Miller will tell you, it almost got knocked off the mound in the All-Star game that year, okay. The winds got very bad, and it got really chilly at night. But, he didn't know that at the time. And so that's how that came down. But Stoneham wanted to go to Minneapolis. I mean, that's where their farm team was. All the players that eventually played in San Francisco were in Minneapolis at the time.
Right.
And it would have been a natural progression. But, that didn't work out.
Yeah, that was a pretty savvy move. That was a pretty savvy move of Walter O'Malley to get the Phillies to negate the move.
Block it.
That was pretty. Yeah. That was pretty slick.
Yeah. Well, and the other slick thing that he did, okay, was he worked out with the New York Yankees. Okay, he basically said, okay, we're going to go to Los Angeles. If you'll keep anybody from the American League to come out by us, okay, we will make sure that nobody else from the National League goes into New York. Okay? Mm-hmm. And there was that, rumor that the Cincinnati Reds were going to ask for permission to go to New York at the same meetings that the National League gave the Giants and Dodgers permission to move. Yeah. And, I mean, all the newspapers were reporting it, that that's what was going to come down. Never happened. The reason why it never happened.
Cincinnati. Yeah, that's true. Cincinnati was going to move into Brooklyn, or New York at least, and he had that agreement with the Yankees that if he blocked that they would block anything out there, and they did for a while, and then in 1961, of course, the Angels came out there because baseball expanded. But that's a whole other ball game. That's a Branch Rickey Continental League conversation that we're not going to have tonight. And but that, you know what? The more I talk about Walter O'Malley, the more I dislike him, and that's incredible in itself, because if you talked to me a decade ago, there was no way that I could dislike Walter O'Malley more than I did back then, or 2 decades ago, or maybe even 3 or 4. But I dislike him more and more the more stories that come out and the more facts that are proven, both in writing and in photographs and in letters that are posted, etc. It's amazing that this guy was, well, I would love to say he was stupid, and I would love to say that he was an ignorant bastard, but he was just the opposite of that. He was a slick, clever guy.
Yep.
Very, very slick, very, very clever.
Shrewd.
Very shrewd, very close to the vest, a great liar, a phenomenal liar, and very successful.
Oh, yeah. Well, and let me, just to make sure that you really hate O'Malley, let me just close with one last story. During the 1950 season, which we know O'Malley and Branch Rickey were battling, and, who was going to, come out on top and stuff like that.
Yeah.
O'Malley used to have a room in the Bossard Hotel that he and his cronies used to go to.
Right.
And they used to have a picture of Branch Rickey up on the wall, big picture of Branch up on the wall, and they used to play pin the tail on the donkey with Branch Rickey's photo.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Really?
they did.
What a
they
slime ball.
Yeah, they were smoking their cigars and drinking their Dewar's Scotch, and that's another true story that came out only a few years ago. Absolutely amazing stuff. If the Brooklyn Dodgers never moved, all of us can agree, and you can disagree if you want. I'm going to speak for all of us. Baseball still would have gone to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It was inevitable. It was going to happen eventually.
Right. It was inevitable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
And it was,
and the Brooklyn Dodgers could either be playing at a Wrigley Field / Fenway Park type Ebbets Field, or at where Citi Field now stands in Queens, and they could still be the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yep. And
don't ever buy into that quote by O'Malley. If we played there, we couldn't be the Brooklyn Dodgers. How could we be the Queens Dodgers? Well, you know something? Yeah. He was the one that also had a plan for about a week that he was going to call the Los Angeles club the Los Angeles Brooklyn Dodgers. Am I right or wrong, Robert Cole?
Yes, you are correct.
Really? That's what he was going to call him?
So he's so full of shit, it's unbelievable how full of shit he was. And the only one that seemed to, the only grown-up in the crowd was probably Dick Young, who could be the writer for the New York Daily News. He the columnist, he could be castigated for many things, many negative things, Dick Young. He could be a prick in his own right, but he was right about O'Malley from get-go. From Jump Street, he was right about O'Malley.
Oh, yeah, he was saying that they were going to move, years before they moved. I mean, he had that in the wind, and he just knew that was going to happen.
Huh.
And he also knew it was all Walter O'Malley, that it was no one else.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, on another day we'll talk about, the Robert Moses end of it. Robert Moses was really a footnote and should never have been involved in all this controversy now.
And yet, to this very day, February 27th, 2019, I still see, I belong to all the Brooklyn Dodgers Facebook pages, and I still see to this day, this very day, not recently, but today, it was Robert Moses' fault.
Yep.
You get that all over the place.
Yep.
Over and over and over. And when you click on the person's name who made that statement, You go to their Facebook page and you find out they're like 38 years old.
Right.
They have no clue.
No, none at all.
No clue whatsoever. Okay, look, we did a great job on Duke Snider. We did a great job on Walter O'Malley and the Brooklyn Dodgers. Let's move out to the West Coast before we hang up our phones, and let's talk about Las Vegas. Las Vegas is the home city of a outfielder named Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper has been rumored to be signing with the Chicago White Sox, the Philadelphia Phillies, the New York Yankees, the San Francisco Giants, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Today, this morning, I read on MLB Rumors that Las Vegas, the casinos, have put the Dodgers up as the favorite to sign Bryce Harper. And by the favorite, I'm talking about the odds-on favorite. I'm talking you have to bet $150 to win $100 if he signs with the Dodgers. And that's absolutely amazing to me because I thought this deal was dead in the water a week ago, 10 days ago.
Me too.
I would have bet my house. That he wouldn't have signed with the Dodgers. There's no way he was going to sign with the Dodgers. Then we heard all kinds of stupid rumors, and forgive me for using the word stupid, but I must in this instant. We heard stupid rumors that he was asking for $555 million. That to me is absolutely ludicrous. That's just beyond the pale. There's no way anyone was ever going to give him that. But now we hear that the Dodgers have more than one deal on the table. They have a deal that's a little bit lengthy in years with money, and they have a short deal that is incredible yearly salary on the table, and an opt-out after 3 years. And the rumor is that Bryce's wife does not like the East Coast. She lives in Las Vegas. She wants to stay on the West Coast. And Bryce Harper either wanted to play, this is the way I understand it, Bryce Harper wanted to play either for the Yankees or the Dodgers. He wanted to play for a traditional, incredible Major League Baseball franchise with incredible history, and he wants to be an icon. And I'm sure the Dodgers have told him that he will be on billboards with LeBron James and this and that or whatever. And I want to get both of your feelings on this. This could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. It's supposed to happen before this weekend. Do you believe now, as we speak tonight, that Bryce Harper will be a Los Angeles Dodger? Ron Rabinowitz.
I would say I hope so. I'm not positive yet, although I did read an article late this afternoon that said the Phillies are now saying that it's a remote chance that they might get Harper. Before they were positive. Mm-hmm. And the Giants are still sniffing around. And supposedly they're offering some big money in long term. But I would say it's a good chance, yes.
Speaking of Harper's wife, as I was a minute ago, yes. Harper's wife is quoted as saying her favorite stadium in the major leagues is the Oracle, the Giants ballpark out in San Francisco.
Huh.
I just throw that out there as a thing that I read. I don't know if how much that counts or whatever. But,
sounds like she's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it does sound like she's pretty powerful, and rightfully so. And rightfully so. Think about it, though. You know, family. Yeah. You know, this and that, moving your family and stuff. But you know what? If Bryce Harper looks at the situation and he sees the Giant roster if he's going to sign a 5 or 7 year contract with the Giants, by the time his contract is over, or absolutely by the time his buyout comes, the Giants are still going to be a poor baseball club. They're not going to be vying for the division championship, as the Dodgers are going to be in first or second place, in the next 5 years. So I think Bryce Harper himself sees himself as a Dodger. What do you think of Robert Cole?
I've always thought he wanted to be a Dodger, but he was chasing the money. Okay, I think he and Boris made a big mistake. Okay, they had a 10-year, $300 million contract. As soon as the season ended, they thought that was going to be the opening bid
in Washington. Yeah,
and it wasn't. All right, Manny Machado signed for that same 10 years, $300 million, and I'm not sure. What I'm reading is that the Giants are offering a longer-term deal. The Dodgers are offering a shorter-term deal with more money.
Yeah.
He wants to
see the key there, though, Robert Cole. The key there, I believe, anyway, is the buyout. In other words, after 3 years, he can leave if he wants to.
Yeah. Well, you see.
And he'll only be 29.
Right. But that's the problem I have with the players, okay? They want the long-term security, but they want to have a buyout so that if they have a couple of good years, they can get out, right?
Yeah.
He can get big money, a 3-year contract with almost any team for big money, more money than he would get in a 10-year deal, okay?
Right.
But these guys want the security, but they also want the buyout. And,
yeah.
If I was an owner, I'd say no way, one or the other. Okay, we're happy to give you the money, but if, we're going to give you the money, okay, and you're going to want to, the security for long term, okay, no buyout. You can't have it all, and that's what these guys want right now. And just a little flip, okay, the Colorado Rockies just signed Arenado for a big contract. Okay,
big contract.
He could have waited one more year and been a free agent. Okay, he and his agent apparently have been, keeping up on what's going on, and they realize, we have a nice contract, $280 million, okay, for 8 years, I think it is, or 7 years, something like that. Let's go ahead and take that. Okay, the Yankees and Hicks, okay, they just signed an extension. Same thing. Okay, the Yankees gave him, I think, a 7-year, $70 million deal. He would have been a free agent.
Severino, too.
Severino also. So, okay, the owners have gotten their point across, too. Okay, Harper and Machado may, in fact, get their money, but a lot of agents and a lot of players are waking up and they're seeing what's going on, and they're not going to try to roll the dice, like some teams have done. You still have 70 free agents out there, good ball players, guys like Adam Jones. Adam Jones is still a good, serviceable ball player. And
I wish the Mets would get him.
Oh, so did I. I wrote that story in the blog.
Oh, boy, do I wish the Mets would sign him.
Oh, yeah. But, here's a guy who's still only 31, I think, 32, still has good years in him, and nobody's even sniffing him at this point. So, a lot of these guys are going to start taking contracts when they're offered and not waiting till that free agent year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
A bone of contention. It looks like the players are totally pissed off, and even though it's years away, what is it, 2021 or 2022 when they could strike if they wanted?
22, I think.
Yeah, I think 2021 is last year.
Okay, so you still got 3 years left, but it's still looming in the distance, and, there's a big shadow. Now, when I asked Ronnie Rabinovitz what he thought about Harper coming to the Dodgers, his first reaction, as I remember it 5 minutes ago, 6 minutes ago, was I hope he does. I want you to make a prediction. Is he going to come to the Dodgers or is he not going to come to the Dodgers? Forget about what you want. What do you predict, Ronnie?
He'll be a Dodger.
He will?
Yeah.
Okay. Robert Cole, will he or will he not be a Dodger?
Yes, I believe he will be.
Okay. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon with the two of you, and it'll make 3 out of 3. For some reason, I have a feeling like he's going to be a Dodger, and that Bellinger is going to be a Gold Glove center fielder for the Dodgers. I'm not so sure if I would tack on the words, I hope he does, because I'm conflicted. But I think that he will be. I think he will be, and I think there will be a lot of interviews and quotes and very interesting things to read, not only from Harper and Boris, his agent, but the most interesting things to me will be the stories coming out of Chicago with the White Sox and the stories coming out of Philadelphia from the Phillies and the stories coming out of San Francisco with the Giants and the stories coming out of wherever else, New York with the Yankees or whatever. And I would love to hear what they will claim. Because, if he signs for X number of dollars with the Dodgers for X number of years, someone is going to come out 3 days later, another club, and say, we offered him Y number of dollars for Y number of years, and he turned us down. He went with the Dodgers. I think you're going to see that. You're going to see a bigger, longer, more expensive deal that he turned down when he does, in fact, sign with the Dodgers, if and when he does. You're going to see that he had better offers elsewhere, and it's because of him wanting to play for the Dodgers and his wife wanting to stay on the West Coast. It's going to play into it. But whatever, that's where she is. And
do you think it'll happen
remiss.
before the weekend?
I think it'll happen by Sunday night.
Okay.
Robert, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, within the next 5 days.
Yeah, it'll happen by Sunday night.
Yeah.
Before you go to bed Sunday night, you'll know. I think. Who knows? Well, I've been saying that for 10 weeks. We would be remiss without mentioning one more thing before we hang up the phones, and that is, since this is a Dodgers broadcast, what the hell is going on with Clayton Kershaw?
Is damage good?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think he's got a big problem, and they're not doing an MRI yet. And why they're not, I don't know. But I think that there's some structural damage there, and I'm afraid to say it, but I think he's going to have some surgery that could put him out for the whole season.
There might be structural damage in more than one place.
Right.
In other words, his shoulder and his back.
His back, yeah.
What do you think,
but
Robert Cole?
It seems like the shoulder is the thing right now.
Right now, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think there's structural damage. What I'm interested in is, I'm sure the Dodgers got insurance, on that contract they just gave him. But what insurance company in the world would have signed off on an insurance policy,
really?
on him in the condition he was in? That's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. One little last thing, and then I'll let you go. If they sign Bryce Harper, the Dodgers, are they done, or do they then take the two other left-handed hitting outfielders, Jock Peterson and Verdugo, and send them to Cleveland for Kluber or Bauer before opening day?
I don't think the Indians are going to give up either Kluber or Bauer at this point.
For Peterson and Verdugo?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't.
Not Peterson or Verdugo. Peterson and Verdugo.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's That's hard to say. Okay, that is hard to say.
Of course, it's all hard to say. This is all speculation. I will say this. I'll speculate before we hang up the phones. I'll speculate that if the Dodgers get Harper, they're over the. I know there's no cap in baseball. I know that. You don't have to remind me. But let's call it a cap. They're over the tax revenue thing, whatever the hell you want to call it. They're over the limit.
Yeah.
So if they get Harper, they're over already. So why the hell not send Peterson and Verdugo for Kluber or Bauer, and then they're a lock to win the National League pennant. Not the division, but the pennant.
Yeah. Well, it's possible. First let's see what they do with Harper.
Yeah, I think that's the first move.
Yeah, and then see
that's
what happens.
That's the first move. Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Great.
We had a great show again.
Fun.
Once again. I want to thank my co-hosts Ron Rabinovitz and Robert Cole. My name is Peter Trunk. This has been A Tale of Two Cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, Dodgers baseball, on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Thank you, gentlemen, for your participation. Talk to you next week.
Thank you, Peter. Good night.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.